It seemed like just another ordinary day at the cafe. Customers chatting, coffee machines humming, and the clock ticking away. Jada, wiping down the counter, had no idea her life was about to take an unexpected turn. But the next day, Jada received a shocking surprise, one that no one saw coming. Little did she know that one bold stance would transform her life completely. How did a simple act lead to such a dramatic twist? Was it a stroke of luck or something more? A star strikes at Poppy's Cafe. The evening was winding down at Poppy's Cafe, a small, cozy spot nestled on the outskirts of town. Jada had just started her usual routine, wiping down the counters, checking the clock, and preparing for the quiet end to another long shift. The cafe was the kind of place where nothing exciting ever happened. The regulars, mostly retirees, came in, exchanged a few friendly words, and sipped their coffee. It was peaceful, predictable, and for Jada, that was just the way she liked it. But tonight, the calm was about to be shattered by someone who didn't belong in a place like this. Someone Jada had never imagined walking through the door. As the bell above the door jingled, Jada looked up from behind the counter, ready to greet another sleepy evening customer. But when she saw who it was, her heart skipped a beat. There, standing in the doorway with that unmistakable air of confidence, was Elon Musk. The Elon Musk, the guy who was everywhere, on TV, in the news, and always at the center of some headline or viral story. The guy who revolutionized electric cars, shook up space exploration, and caused constant chaos with his tweets. And here he was, casually strolling into Poppy's Cafe like it was just any other stop on his way home. Her eyes widened, and for a split second she thought maybe she was imagining things. But no, this was real. He moved towards a booth by the window, looking around as if he were just another customer, but his presence was anything but ordinary. People shifted in their seats, whispered in low tones, and stared. Jada could feel the shift in the room, the tension building. This was no regular evening at Poppy's. This was Elon Musk sitting in her cafe. Jada snapped out of her daze and quickly regained her composure. She took a deep breath, reminding herself that she was still just a waitress. He was still just another customer. She approached his booth, trying to keep her voice steady. "Hi there, what can I get for you tonight?" she asked, flashing him her most professional smile. Elon glanced up, his tired eyes meeting hers. He looked like he'd just come from a long day, his usual confident aura still there, but with a hint of exhaustion. "Just a coffee, black, and maybe a slice of whatever pie you've got," he said with a quiet smile. "Got it," Jada replied, her nerves barely under control. She turned quickly to head back to the counter, her mind racing. Elon Musk was sitting in her cafe. As she poured the coffee and plated the pie, Jada couldn't help but notice the reactions of the regulars. She could hear hushed murmurs and see them stealing glances at the booth where Elon was sitting. She had been serving these same people for months, and she'd never seen them so worked up over a simple coffee order. Why are they acting like this? Jada shook off the thought, reminding herself that Elon Musk was just a man, like any other. But as she carried his order back to his table, a sense of unease settled in her chest. This wasn't just a famous guy sipping coffee. There was something about the atmosphere, the way the regulars were reacting, that made her feel like she was part of something bigger than herself. "Here you go," she said, setting the coffee and pie down on the table. Elon nodded, acknowledging her with a brief smile before returning to his thoughts. His eyes drifted out the window as if lost in some distant place. Jada moved back behind the counter, trying to focus on her work, but her mind kept wandering back to the booth. She had seen Elon on TV countless times, but now that he was sitting right there in front of her, she couldn't shake the feeling that something was off. And then it happened. Frank, one of the older regulars, stood up from his seat and walked over to Elon's table. Frank was known for his blunt opinions, and Jada could feel her stomach tighten. What was he going to say to Elon? Was he going to embarrass her? "Excuse me," Frank's gruff voice cut through the quiet cafe, loud enough for everyone to hear. "Aren't you the guy who helped start OpenA1? The one who was all about that, right?" Elon looked up from his coffee, pausing mid-sip. "Yes, that's me," he replied, his voice calm and unbothered. Frank didn't hesitate. "So why'd you bail on them?" I hear you're starting your own AI company now. Isn't that a bit hypocritical? Jada's heart raced. She knew this wasn't going to end well. She could see the other regulars watching, leaning in to catch every word. It wasn't just a conversation anymore. It was a public interrogation. Elon sighed, setting his cup down carefully. I had concerns about the direction OpenAI was heading. I think AI needs to be developed with transparency and truth, not with hidden agendas, he said, his tone calm but firm. Frank crossed his arms, his skepticism clear. Yeah, sure. You just didn't get the control you wanted, so now you're starting your own thing, huh? All for more money and power. Isn't that it? The murmurs grew louder around the cafe, and Jada could feel the tension in the air. The regulars weren't just questioning Elon. They were attacking him, his motives, his character, everything. And to Jada, it didn't feel right. A waitress takes a stand. Sure, Elon Musk wasn't everyone's cup of tea. He was controversial, he had his flaws. But he was also someone who had changed the world. He wasn't some average guy. He was the guy who had taken on the impossible and made it look easy. The guy who dreamed big. But as she watched him sitting there, defending himself quietly against Frank's accusations, she felt a deep sense of empathy. Elon Musk was no stranger to criticism, but something about hearing it here in this small, quiet cafe made it feel personal. Elon leaned back in his seat, his posture relaxed, but there was something vulnerable about him in that moment. It's not about power or profit, he said, his voice steady. It's about accountability. AI is a tool, a very powerful one, and I don't want to look back one day and realize I didn't do everything I could to make sure it's used responsibly. Jada stood behind the counter, unsure of what to do. Her initial excitement about meeting Elon Musk had quickly turned into a sense of unease. Watching the other patrons criticize him, watching Frank dismiss him as just another greedy billionaire, it didn't sit well with her. Jada had always believed in standing up for what was right, but she never thought it would come to this. She couldn't just let them tear him down without saying anything, not when she knew better. Not when she knew that Elon Musk wasn't just some rich guy out for himself. He was trying to make the world a better place, no matter how controversial his methods were. She took a deep breath and walked over to Frank's table, her palms sweating as she cleared her throat. Look, she said, her voice steady but strong. I know not everyone agrees with what he's doing, but you can't just write him off as selfish. She turned to face the rest of the room, her gaze moving from one regular to the next. This is a guy who's not just invested in tech and space, he's funding hospitals, helping sick kids. I've read about it, and when it comes to AI, technology moves forward whether we like it or not. The fact that he's trying to make it safer, more transparent, that's something we should appreciate. For a moment, the cafe was silent. All eyes were on Jada, and she could feel her heart pounding in her chest. Elon looked up at her, his expression unreadable, but there was a flicker of something in his eyes. Surprise, maybe, or even gratitude. He hadn't expected anyone to stand up for him, especially not someone like her. A waitress at a small-town cafe. Jada returned his gaze and gave him a small nod, unsure if he had noticed her words. But deep down, she knew she had done something that felt right. Even if the regulars didn't change their minds, she had at least spoken her truth. And for Jada, that was enough. Jada's voice picked up momentum. Just because he's trying to improve on something that already exists doesn't mean he's only in it for the money. Isn't that what innovation is about? Finding ways to make things better? The room went eerily silent. Some of the regulars exchanged looks, eyebrows raised in surprise, while others crossed their arms, their skepticism hanging thick in the air. Jada had known these people for years, served them their coffee, shared a laugh over pie, and listened to their endless stories about life. But tonight, something was different. She could feel the change, the shift in how they were looking at her. She'd always felt like part of the fabric of Poppy's cafe, like she belonged. But now, it felt like she was on the outside, a stranger in a place she thought she knew. She had always been the one to diffuse tension with a joke or an easy smile. But this was different. She wasn't joking, and she wasn't about to back down. The sound of the back door creaking open startled her from her thoughts. Mr. Smith, the cafe owner, stepped into the room, his frown deepening as his eyes scanned the tension-filled scene. His gaze shifted from Jada to the regulars, his concern evident. "Jada," he said, his voice level but firm, "what's going on here?" Her stomach dropped. She didn't know how to answer. She had been caught in the middle of something she hadn't anticipated, a moment that would cost her more than she'd expected. She took a breath, steadying herself. "I was just defending Mr. Musk," she said, her voice quieter now, but still holding that spark of defiance. Mr. Smith's face tightened, and he took a long look around the room, gauging the disapproving looks from the regulars. "Jada," he started, his voice heavy with finality, "I appreciate your passion, but these customers, they're the backbone of this place. We can't afford to have you arguing, especially not over someone like that." Her heart sank. The words felt like a slap, and suddenly the walls of the cafe seemed to close in on her. She had spent years building relationships with these people, listening to their problems, celebrating their small victories, and now she was being asked to walk away. "But Mr. Smith, I wasn't arguing," she protested, her voice trembling just a bit. "I was just saying what I believe," but he held up his hand, silencing her. "I've made up my mind. I think it's best if we find someone else to take your place. You can stay for a few more days, but after that," Jada felt her chest tighten. She wasn't prepared for this. The sting of betrayal and the embarrassment of being dismissed in front of everyone rushed over her in waves. The laughter of a few regulars echoed in her ears, as if the whole thing were some kind of joke. She blinked rapidly, trying to push the tears back, but they were there, hot and bitter. Then she heard a familiar voice. "Thank you for standing up for me, Jada," Elon Musk said, his voice soft but sincere, carrying a weight of regret. He looked at her, a mix of appreciation and understanding in his eyes. "I don't want to be the reason you lose your job. I think it's best if I leave now." Jada nodded, not trusting herself to speak. She couldn't look at him. The realization of what had just happened hit her like a wave. Her chest ached. She had only tried to do the right thing, to defend someone she believed in, and now it had cost her. Elon's presence had somehow made everything unravel. Without another word, he stood and left, the bell above the door ringing as it closed behind him. The cafe was silent, and Jada felt the weight of every eye on her. It was the kind of silence that felt heavy, suffocating. The next morning, Jada entered Poppy's cafe, the familiar doors swinging open with a hollow sound. The air was thick, charged with the memories of the day before. She hadn't slept much, her mind too tangled in the events that had unfolded. The thought of facing the regulars, of their judgment and pity, twisted her stomach into knots. As the lunch rush began to fade, Jada went through the motions. She was barely paying attention until a familiar sound, the bell above the door, chimed. At first, she barely registered it until she heard whispers. She turned and froze. There he was, standing in the doorway. Elon Musk. Her breath caught in her throat. He was back. The room went still. She could feel every eye on her, but this time it wasn't the same. There was no skepticism, no judgment, just curiosity. Jada watched as Elon scanned the room with his usual quiet confidence before heading to the same table by the window that he'd sat at the night before. Jada stood still, her heart pounding in her chest. She didn't know why he had come back, but the tension in the air was almost unbearable. Mr. Smith hovered near the counter, looking more flustered than ever, but still saying nothing. Jada's hands shook slightly as she grabbed his coffee and a slice of apple pie, but she forced herself to keep it together. She approached his table, setting the coffee and pie down with a polite smile that felt too forced. She didn't linger, not wanting to stir up more trouble. Elon, however, wasn't done. He stayed, quietly sipping his coffee, occasionally glancing at her. After a long silence, he met her gaze and gestured for her to come over. Jada's pulse raced. She tried to steady herself as she grabbed the card machine. Her heart was in her throat as she walked toward him, unsure of what was about to happen next. "Thanks for coming back," she said, her voice quieter now, but still carrying that trace of warmth. Elon looked up, his expression softening. "Jada, I just wanted to thank you for standing up for me last night," he said, his voice low but sincere. I know it cost you, and not everyone would have done that. She looked at him, stunned. I just said what I believed, she replied, trying to keep her voice steady. No one should be judged by one side of the story. Elon nodded thoughtfully, his eyes locking onto hers. You know, after I left here last night, I couldn't stop thinking about what you did. So I checked in with my team. We could really use someone like you. Jada blinked, not sure she had heard him right. We have a foundation, Elon continued, and we're always looking for people with heart who can connect with others. It wouldn't be glamorous, but it would be steady work, and who knows? Maybe this could be the start of something bigger. Her mouth went dry. Was he really offering her a job? What do you mean? She asked, barely able to process the words coming out of his mouth. Elon smiled. I'm offering you a position with the Foundation's call center. It's not much, but it's a chance to get your foot in the door. And who knows what could happen next? Jada's stomach flipped. This couldn't be real. She had just lost her job at the cafe for standing up for him, and now he was offering her something that could change everything. I don't know what to say, she said, her voice shaking slightly. Elon chuckled softly, reassuring her. Just say yes. We'll figure out the rest later. Without thinking, Jada nodded. Yes, I'd love to, she said, her heart racing with excitement and disbelief. As Elon stood to leave, he gave her one last smile. See you soon, Jada. My team will be in touch. With that, he walked out of the cafe, leaving behind a stunned silence and a new sense of possibility in the air. Jada stood there for a moment, trying to process everything. One decision, one simple act of standing up for what she believed in, had completely changed the course of her life. In a world where most people play it safe, where compromise and convenience often win the day, she had dared to speak her truth. And in doing so, she had opened the door to an opportunity she never would have imagined. Sometimes, standing up for what's right doesn't just change the course of one moment. It changes the entire trajectory of your life. All it takes is the courage to believe in yourself, even when the world around you doubts. What do you think motivated Jada to defend Elon Musk in the cafe, even though it cost her her job? Do you think her actions were purely out of admiration? Or was there something deeper? We'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments below. And if you found the story touching, like the video and subscribe for more. Thanks for watching.